Hello everyone, I'm Nitahone, and it is time for another MTG Top 10. Normally, I only do these on Friday, but I have a bit of extra time right now, so I'm going to do 2 this week and 2 next week. This Friday's MTG Top 10 will cover Trample, which won the poll this week, but this Top 10 is on something I've wanted to do for a while, Invitational Cards. Invitational cards are an interesting part of Magic's history. From 1997 to 2007, Wizards held a special tournament called the Magic Invitational Tournament, which the world's best players were invited to. One of the prizes of the tournament for the winner was to design a brand new Magic card, and not only that, the card would bear your likeness. In other words, you got to be on a Magic card of your own design. Your card did have to go through R&D, so it couldn't be completely broken, but it turns out pros are pretty good at designing cards. Of the 11 invitational cards that were designed, 10 of them have managed at least one Premier Event Top 8, and several of them have gone on to be prolific in the game. The one card that never really caught on the competitive level? Kai Buddha's Void Mage Prodigy. Sorry, Kai. Guess you just have to settle for being considered one of the greatest Magic players of all time. In this video, we're going to rank the other 10 invitational cards based on how well they have done on Magic's competitive scene. Before I get started, a quick reminder on how I score these. Pro Tour Top 8s, Legacy and Vintage Championship Top 8s are worth 2 points, and Grand Prix Top 8s are worth 1 point. At number 10 is the card designed by 2005 Invitational winner Terry So, Rakdos Augur Mage. This mage sports good stats for 3 mana as a 3 mana 3/2 with First Strike, and it has a very unique activated ability, wherein you and your opponent both get to pick apart each other's hands. The idea here is that since you are the one using it, you can use it at a time when you aren't going to be hurt too badly by it. All in all, though, the Augur Mage didn't see a ton of play, only managing a single Grand Prix Top 8 in 2012 in a modern Jund deck. But it is a good example of the unique designs that many of these invitational cards have. At number 9, we have the card designed by the 1999 Invitational winner, Mike Long, who designed Rootwater Thief. Fun fact, of all the invitational cards, his is the only one where his likeness does not actually appear as the creature the card represents. In this case, his likeness is on the man rowing the boat that is being chased by the Rootwater Thief. Another interesting design, this 2 mana 1/2 Merfolk can gain flying for a single blue mana, and if you're willing to dump 2 more mana into it, you get to search your opponent's library for a card and exile it when it hits your opponent. This kind of effect is widely considered to not be that great today, but in the old days of Magic, cards like this were valued a little bit more, probably in part because of the presence of the restricted list and non-rotating formats. Even in its own time, though, it isn't like this saw a ton of play. It found its way into a Merfolk opposition deck that top-8'd Worlds in 2001, a blue-white control deck at Pro Tour New Orleans that same year, and then in 2005 it managed to get an extended Grand Prix Top 8 in the sideboard of a Reanimator deck called Cephalid Breakfast, where it could be brought in post-board to get all the graveyard hate out of your opponent's deck. And number 8 is the card designed by 1997 Invitational winner Oli Rod. A 1 mana 1/1, Sylvan's Safekeeper has the ability to sacrifice lands to give one of your creatures Shroud until end of turn. Having one of these in play makes it pretty difficult for your opponent to remove your creature successfully. While printed in 2002, this one took a while to really catch on, not seeing play in Block or Standard, first gaining a Grand Prix Top 8 in Legacy in a Hulk Flash, a creature-based combo deck that could use the Safekeeper to protect its combo pieces. It was also a common sideboard card in various other creature-based Legacy decks like Zenith Bant and Maverick. Most recently, it's actually managed a Grand Prix Top 8 at Grand Prix Santa Clara earlier this year in a Dark Depths deck, another combo deck that relied on creatures staying in play, and it served as a way to protect Vampire Hexmage, so it could be that the Safekeeper is poised to start putting up some more points. At number 7, we have what is probably one of the most popular of the invitational cards, and it was created by one of the game's most successful and popular players, 2000 Invitational winner John Finkel. Shadow Mage Infiltrator is a 3 mana 1/3 with Fear who draws you a card anytime it hits your opponent. This is just one of my favorite cards in general. I'm a big fan of evasive creatures who draw you cards when they do damage to the opponent, and it was a fairly successful card on the competitive level, an excellent card in control decks. In Odyssey block, it'd start alongside Psychotog and blue-black control. The Infiltrator was also reprinted in 2007 in Time Spiral as a time-shifted card, and enjoyed success in that block format as well, once again being a big part of blue-black control decks. It also found success in Standard both times too, first managing a Grand Prix Top 8 in 2002 in a Battle of Wits deck piloted by none other than current Magic World Champion William Jensen, and in 2007 it showed up in makeshift Mannequin decks in Standard. It also has a lone extended Pro Tour Top 8, which it managed in a blue-black Reanimator deck. At number 6, we have another one of my favorite cards, this one designed by Darwin Castle, the winner of the 1998 Invitational, Avalanche Riders. Yeah, I like land destruction. I'm that guy. But anyway, for 4 mana, you get a 2-2 with haste that blows up a land. He does have Echo, meaning you have to pay 4 for him again, but 4 mana for a 2-2 that either did 2 damage or chump blocked something or even traded for something was a pretty great deal, even if you didn't want to pay the Echo cost. Like Shadow Mage Infiltrator, he benefited from being a time-shifted card in Time Spiral, making him legal in Modern and giving him another chance through Standard. In Block, he was a heavily played card, picking up 3 Pro Tour top 8s in that format, largely because there were absurdly powerful lands in Urza's block like Tolarian Academy and Gaia's Cradle, and taking these lands away was a pretty big deal. His second time through Block, there were a lot of greedy mana bases, so he saw play again, picking up 4 Pro Tour top 8s in Time Spiral Block. In Standard, he saw play primarily in decks built around land destruction, 3 of which finished in the top 8 of Worlds in 1999, and 2 in Worlds in 2000. He has seen play in Modern in decks that can toolbox him into play as a way to deal with problem lands like Celestial Colonnade. This means he's seen play in decks like Birthing Pod and Chord of Calling. Most recently, he's seeing play in Living End, since he can blow up a land, go to the graveyard, and then come back and blow up another land after you cast Living End. At number 5, we have a card that is a staple in EDH in addition to its accomplishments in Magic's Pro Tours and Grand Prix, which was designed by Jens Thorin, who was the winner of the 2002 Invitational, and that is Solemn Simulacrum. This card is all about value, allowing you to ramp your mana when he comes into play and drawing you a card when he dies. It's pretty difficult for your opponent to interact with him and come out ahead, as he is one card who is basically worth 3. The sheer value of this card was first realized at the Mirrored and Block Pro Tour Kobe in 2004, where it put up 6 Pro Tour top 8s in a variety of decks, ranging from ramp to aggro. There wasn't really a good reason not to be running him in Block. Standard is where he saw the most play, though, where he is aided by also being reprinted in Magic 2012, giving him 2 shots at Standard. His first time through Standard was actually pretty quiet, though, managing only a single Pro Tour top 8. His second time through, it saw played at a very high rate. It fit perfectly into ramp decks, which were pretty dominant in Standard at the time, built around Primeval Titan and Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. It was also right at home in Birthing Pod, because you could get so much value out of it and then sacrifice it to your pod. It also has a lone Legacy Grand Prix top 8 way back in 2005. It hasn't seen play anywhere since 2012, though you can bet it's the kind of card that might get reprinted in a core set, and if it is, it's likely to see a bunch of play in Standard once again. At number 4, we have the card designed by the winner of the Invitational in 2000, Chris Picula, and that is Meddling Mage, a 2-mana 2-2 who lets you turn off a card in your opponent's deck as long as it's in play. Especially devastating against combo decks, it was also good against decks that were built around one particular strategy. In its Standard environment, that involved cards like Psychotog and Opposition, and the Mage could name those cards and really hurt those decks. You could also always just name removal, making sure the Mage and all the rest of your board stays safe, or at least safer. The Mage picked up 1 Pro Tour top 8 at the Block Pro Tour, and only picked up 1 Grand Prix top 8 in Standard in its first time through. In Extended, it saw a lot of play, though, especially an aggro control deck called Super Grow, but also in aggressive decks like White Weenie, Affinity, and Zoo. In some of these decks, it was a sideboard card to shut off cards like Isochron Scepter, or a sideboard card to bring in to shut off Artifact Hate in the case of Affinity. Since it got reprinted in Alara Reborn, it got another run through Standard, though it didn't do much with that, only putting up 2 more Grand Prix top 8s. However, the printing also meant it was legal in Modern, and it has picked up a lot of top 8s, seeing play in Collected Company decks, where it is a nice hit off the top of your library, especially if you have an idea of what is in your opponent's hand. Most recently, it has become one of the cards in the Humans deck that has recently jumped to Tier 1 in Modern, as it offers solid stats and a disruptive ability along with the human creature type. At number 3, we have the creature who was designed by Antoine Ruel, who won the 2006 Magic Invitational Tournament, and that is Ranger of Eos. Basically a 4-mana 3-2 that draws you 2 cards, provided that your deck is well suited for him. The Ranger was a nice top curve for aggressive decks, as it gave them a way of making sure they continued to draw creatures to populate the board with. In Standard, this included Kithkin and Zoo decks, and in Extended, this included White Weenie, Elves, and Extended Zoo. After Extended ended in 2011 and Modern was created, Ranger of Eos continued to see play. It was good in Birthing Pod decks because it gave you value before you sacrificed it to your pod, and it saw some fringe play in other one-drop heavy decks like Soul Sisters. After Birthing Pod got banned in 2014, Ranger of Eos disappeared from the top tables of Modern for a while, until 2016 when a certain 1-mana creature became one of the most feared creatures in all of Modern, and that is Death's Shadow. The fact that the Ranger could load your hand with 2 of these is a real problem for your opponent, and it continues to see play in the various versions of Death's Shadow in Modern, and it will continue to, as long as that deck is relevant. And number 2, we have the Invitational card designed by Bob Marr, which is perhaps, of all the Invitational cards on the list, most famously an Invitational card, and that is Dark Confidant. I say it is most famously an Invitational card because people simply refer to this card as Bob, no matter what the printing is, the name of the player who designed it and whose likeness it bears. That's not really true of any of the other cards on this list. Nobody else calls the cards by their first name, at least not a majority of the player base. The Confidant is a very powerful card because it provides you with card advantage. Sure, you have to take some damage when you do, but the decks that run him are the kind that have low curves and don't take a ton of damage off of the extra cards that Bob draws you. He has found success in many formats. In Block, this included 2 top 8s in aggro decks. In Standard, it included 2 more Pro Tour top 8s in aggro decks, but it really took off in Extended. It stopped playing all manner of decks there, provided they had a low average converted mana cost. This included control decks like Psychotog, aggressive decks like Zoo and other Tarmogoyf decks, and even combo decks like Dark Depths and Thopter Depths. After Extended ended, he became a fixture in the newly created Modern format, where he has thrived for the last 8 years, primarily in Jund decks and Abzan. Legacy is another format that isn't safe from Bob, though he hasn't seen play there since 2015. And at number 1, we have a card that has come in at number 1 on 2 other MTG top 10 lists, and a card that outscores all the other cards on this list if we only counted its points in Modern. And it was designed by the winner of the very last Invitational tournament in 2007, Tiago Chan, who designed Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster Mage is a control player's dream, capable of flashing back any spells in your graveyard, and it can do it at instant speed, which means you can do it with counter magic. Basically, always a 2-for-1, Snapcaster Mage is an incredibly powerful card whose success began in the Block format and has continued all the way to the present day, especially in Modern. It was key in many Standard control decks at the time, finding the most success in Delver decks and Grixis control. In Modern, it has continually seen play since it was printed in basically any deck running blue. In the early days of Modern, this meant Delver, but has also included Scapeshift, Gifts Ungiven decks, Splinter Twin, Blue Moon, and most recently, Grixis Death's Shadow. Tiago Chan's card has even proven strong enough for Magic's Eternal formats, which have several cheap counter spells and card draw spells that the Mage can recast for you, frequently appearing alongside Delver of Secrets in those formats as well. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. There will also be the normally scheduled one this Friday. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help my channel continue to improve, you can contribute to my Patreon in the description below. Thanks for watching.